let's dive into the story of the Quraysh, who were, without a doubt, one of the most powerful tribes in Arabian history. It's really a story about incredible privilege, divine favor, and, the huge consequences of how that favor was handled.
But what if this isn't just an old story? What if a tiny, 4-verse chapter in the Quran, one that's often seen as just a simple prayer, is actually a deep masterclass on gratitude, on security, and on the hidden connection between our daily grind and our ultimate purpose? This isn't just history, folks. It's a conversation that's incredibly relevant to our modern anxieties.
So let's talk about this divine blueprint. The whole key to understanding the story of the Quraysh is packed into just 4 incredibly short verses.
On the surface, the message seems pretty straightforward, right? It's saying because of the security that lets you run your trade caravans, you should worship God, the Lord of the Kaaba, who feeds you and keeps you safe. Simple enough. But trust me, the real story is hiding just beneath the surface of these words.
Now, who exactly were the Quraysh? They weren't just any tribe, you see. They were the custodians of the sacred Kaaba in Mecca, which gave them immense religious authority and social clout. They were, for all intents and purposes, the elite 1% of their time, controlling both the spiritual and economic capital of the whole region.
So, what was their secret sauce? I mean, how did they maintain this level of dominance, especially when their business relied on these long, dangerous trade journeys? Well, this brings us to a fascinating concept, something you could call a kind of divine passport.
The very first verse of the chapter uses this really specific and pretty rare Arabic word ilaf. Now, on paper, it just means something like harmony or familiarity. It kind of suggests the Quraysh were just used to their routine, their trade journeys. But what if that's just scratching the surface? What if this wasn't just about a habit, but about something way more profound? A divinely gifted economic passport that made the impossible possible.
And this is where it gets so interesting. Ilaf here really refers to this state of divinely gifted harmony, a covenant of safety. God wasn't just watching them get used to their trips, He was actively paving the way, taming the dangers of the path for them. It's what made their entire economic system even work in the first place.
And the origin of this protection? It's amazing. If you look at the chapter right before this one in the Quran, Al-Fil, it talks about God miraculously saving the Kaaba from a massive invading army of elephants. That event gave the Quraysh this incredible prestige. All the other tribes looked at them and thought, wow, these people are under divine protection. And that spiritual capital? That became their economic passport, guaranteeing them safe passage wherever they went.
Okay, so they've got all these incredible blessings, right? But this is where the plot thickens. When you put this mountain of divine blessings on one side and the Quraysh's response on the other, you see this huge disconnect, a great imbalance. It was time for what you could call a divine audit.
I mean, just look at this. On one hand, the blessings are overwhelming. You've got the Ilaf securing their entire economy, the prestige of guarding the Kaaba, actual food and safety. But then you look at their response, and it's just, wow. They filled the very house of God with 360 idols, became completely arrogant, and flat out rejected the monotheism that was the legacy of their own ancestors.
And this is so important to get. This wasn't just a moral slip-up, it was a violation of a sacred promise, a divine covenant. And their abuse of all that privilege, it was setting the stage for an absolutely inevitable and dramatic turning point in history.
Which leads us directly to the consequence of that broken covenant, the conquest of their very own city, Mecca. So here's a quick rundown of how it all went down. In 628, a 10-year truce is signed, but it doesn't even last 2 years. By 630, allies of the Quraysh attack allies of the Muslims, and just like that, the peace is shattered. In response, Prophet Muhammad and an army of 10,000 march on Mecca.
The final straw was an attack by one tribe on another. But the key detail here is that the Quraysh weren't just innocent bystanders. The sources say that some of their leaders secretly provided weapons and fighters, which means they were directly complicit in breaking the treaty.
And now get this, because it's truly remarkable. An army of 10,000 is marching on the city, and the total combined casualties, 15. Just 15 people. This was not a bloody battle. It was a decisive, strategic, and incredibly peaceful victory.
So what happens next? Well, Muhammad enters the Kaaba and personally destroys all 360 of those idols, cleansing the house of God. He then gathers the leaders of the Quraysh, addresses them, and ends up pardoning most of them, re-establishing Mecca as a sacred sanctuary for good.
Okay, so that's a powerful history lesson. But what does a 1,400-year-old story about a tribe in Arabia have to do with us, right now, today? Let's connect it all back to that original blueprint and see how it applies to our lives. The whole saga really is a timeless case study. It teaches us that privilege, whether it's ancient or modern, is always a test. And true gratitude? It's not just a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's an action. It's about how you respond to the blessings you've been given. That final verse gives us this profound lens to look at our own struggles. I mean, think about the anxieties in your own life for a second. Are they rooted in what the chapter calls hunger? You know, that spiritual sense of lack, of constant dissatisfaction? Or are they rooted in fear, that deep insecurity about the future, that dread of losing what you have? This all leads to a really practical takeaway. You can conduct your own blessing audit. So first, identify your personal caravans. That's your job, your skills, the stable routines that provide for you. Second, try to recognize the hidden ilaf, that invisible grace that makes it all possible, like your health or living in a peaceful place. Third, trace it all back to the ultimate source. And finally, respond. Respond with a conscious, real act of gratitude. And that leaves us with one last thought to really chew on. We all have unearned privileges. Advantages we were either born with or just stumbled into. The real question is, how are we using them? What unearned privilege in your life is actually a test of your gratitude?